Hey everybody, it's Steve Van Tassel here again for Dynasty Owner. And we're going to, our video and article this week, my video and article this week is all about Dynasty Owner running back tiers. Last week we talked about the quarterback tiers, and this week we're going to build on that and we're going to start talking about the running back tiers. Before we get started, make sure you like the video, watch the whole thing, hopefully get some good information. But we're talking about running backs this week. And, you know, running back tiers are different than quarterback tiers, especially in Dynasty Owner. Because in Dynasty Owner, you got to play a lot more running backs than you do quarterbacks. I mean, you're playing, each individual Dynasty Owner has 2 running backs in their starting lineup, plus 2 on their bench, plus the flex position, which you could use as a running back. So we're talking like 48 to 60 running backs per week are getting you points in Dynasty Owner. So you need to have good ones. You need to have productive ones. And we need to tier them up so you know when to draft them or when to think about drafting them. You know, and as we always say, everything's here different in Dynasty Owner because of the salaries and the contracts. And with our running back tiers, that is no different. So without further ado, we're going to start talking about our running back. We're going to start talking about our running back tiers. And first thing we're going to do is talk about tier 1, which are our high value young but not rookie running backs. And that's important. And there's a lot of them. We've got 2 pages of them. There's 10 of them, in fact, who are all young, all have more than 1 year left on their contract, and all not rookies. And all of them have very good value. The last column was 2021 Dynasty dollar per point. And you can see that they're all very, very, very low numbers there, which is good. Here on this first page, we've got a couple of guys who make under $1 million a year in Myles Gaskin and James Robinson. They're also projected to have some of the lower totals of these players, but they're still good values. I mean, especially with those contracts that they've got for 2 more years. Our second page, the guys start to go up in salaries, but they also start to go up in terms of the number of projected points they're going to get, including the consensus right now, #1 pick in Dynasty Owner, who is Jonathan Taylor. His salary is just under $2 million. He's projected to get almost 315 Dynasty Owner fantasy points this year. And he's being drafted about usually with the #1 pick. I think his ADP is around 1.7 right now. And also on this list at the bottom is last year's #1 rookie draft pick, who was Clyde Edwards-Helaire. We'll get into that a little bit more. He's kind of the reason why we have this tier that says not rookie running backs on here, because tier 2, not surprisingly, is our high value rookie running backs. And the reason why we've got these 4 guys who are all rookies, all on 4-year deals in a separate tier slightly below is because of what happened with Clyde Edwards-Helaire last year. Last year, he was being drafted in the first round of Dynasty Owner drafts because of his contract, his position where he was drafted, because he was the first running back taken, but he was the 32nd pick overall in the NFL draft. And he had an ADP of I believe it was 9.3 last year. But he ended up finishing the year as the 21st ranked running back in Dynasty Owner. So he clearly didn't live up to the hype. And that's why I have a slightly lower tier, here tier 2 of these rookie running backs. All who are on 4-year contracts, all with great value in the last column. Different salaries here. You got Najee Harris, the first running back taken, who makes $2 million a year more than Trey Sermon, who's ahead of him in terms of value, but about 90 points behind him in terms of projected points. Sermon made this list. We'll see another list later on that he could have been on, but I think he deserves to be on this list in tier 2, especially with that value. So now tier 3 is a small tier, but it's high value running backs with 1 year left until they get paid. And as we know in Dynasty Owner, that's important because you've got these 2 guys, Chase Edmonds and Nick Chubb, who are both great running backs, expect to get a lot of fantasy points this year for you, but they've got a low salary, but it's only for 1 year. That means next year you're going to have to really start paying them, especially if they do well this year. And that's going to make it very difficult. That's going to make it very difficult for folks to project because, you don't know what they're going to make next year. If they do really well, they're going to make a lot. If they don't do so well, they might not make as much, and that's not going to be good if you draft them early. So now tier 4, I'm sure everybody's been saying, well, where are the big guys? Where is the Dalvin Cooks, the Alvin Kamara's, CMC? Where are they? Well, they're in tier 4, which is another reason why Dynasty is so different than all other Dynasty leagues and redraft leagues. These guys, your top running backs, they're high production. They're going to get you a lot of points if they're healthy, but they get a lot of salary. They'll make $12 million or more. All of them are signed for at least 3 more years. Most are 4 or 5 more years. So they're going to get paid and going to get paid for a long time. I mean, they're going to produce, but their value is a lot lower, which is why these guys who are your tier 1, your elite running backs in other fantasy leagues, redraft or dynasty leagues, are tier 4 here in Dynasty Owner. It's just they cost a lot of money. It's going to cost a lot of your salary cap, and they need to hit, or you're going to be in trouble. So the next tier is what we're calling mid-range salary productive veterans with multi-year contracts. That's a mouthful, but here are the guys. Familiar names, good salaries for at least 2 more years. Eckler's got 3. He's a little different, and some of them are on rookie. Only one's on rookie contract. That's Josh Jacobs. But you've got Mike Davis, who did very well last year for Carolina, moving to Atlanta. Eckler, Carson, and Kareem Hunt, who all make $5 to $6 million a year, and they're going to produce, but they're not going to produce. We're not projected to produce as well as your tier 4 guys. You're going to get them for less salary, and actually their value is lower, but they're not going to produce as many points. And here for me, when I have a 5A, I always have a 5B. And these are guys, the only difference is that they've got 1 year left on their contract. And there's 3 of them, little different guys here. The important thing is they've got the middle column, the 1 year left on this salary here. But you got Barkley, David Johnson, and Melvin Gordon. And all of them, Barkley's projected to get 100 more points than these guys this year, but all of them kind of fit in this thing because they have a mid-range salary. They're not making double-digit $1 million a year yet. They're not making $2 million a year right now. Next, we have tier 6, and I'm calling this the young, cheap players who might be the starter, might being the key word. And you'll notice that there's only 3 teams listed here. Ironically, they're all AFC East teams. And the reason why, like a Devin Singletary and a Zach Moss are listed on here is that we don't know who the starter is going to be. And so they're being selected at about the same spot in our 2021 style drafts. It costs about the same. Moss has 1 more year left on the contract. Singletary's projected to get a few more points. And then you've got the trio from New York, the Jets, everybody but the rookie here. You got Ty Johnson, LaMichael Perrine, and Tevin Coleman. Not much salary for any of those guys, but also not a ton of production expected. But if one of them suddenly becomes the starter, they could be, if they suddenly overtake the other guys and they become the clear starter, they will be a lot more valuable. Now, next we've got tier 7A, and these are backups. But they're those backups who you want to have as your handcuff or don't mind having, especially on your bench every week, because they play a bit. They get some points every week. But if their starter gets hurt, they are going to be in your starting lineup immediately. And no surprise here, and they all have got multi-years left on their contract. You got your Tony Pollard, A.J. Dillon, Alexander Madison, a couple of new additions here in Darrington Evans and Darrell Henderson to the list. But, they're all not projected to get a ton of points. But if the starter goes down in these situations, that number could change significantly. And to go along with that, we have tier 7B. And these are the higher salary backups who could also do the same thing. And there's only 2 of them, but they're 2 important guys to have. They're Gus Edwards and Latavius Murray. Both make about $3.5 million a year. Both are projected to get about the same number of points, so they have about the same value. Edwards, while it says 1 year here, he did sign an extension, so he's going to have $5 million contract in 2022 and 2023. It's just that if something next year, if you own Gus Edwards, you'll be able to drop him if you don't want that new salary. So that's why him and Murray on this list. They have multi-years. I mean, Edwards is going to be with the Ravens for a couple more years, even though he technically only has 1 year left on this contract with this salary. Next, we've got some rookies who are worth owning and playing in 2021. There's just 3 right here. We've already got sort of the top tier rookies way back in tier 2. So there's a big jump. There's a big difference here. But these are all guys who are making about $1 million a year, projected to do pretty well. But if something happens, they could move their way up many tiers and be like tier 1 or tier 2 or tier 3 next year, depending on what happens with them this year. And so, all drafted in in the third or fourth round, and all projected to get in the mid hundreds in terms of fantasy points. This year, Dynasty on fantasy points, but they're all worth owning definitely, and probably playing. They just might not get off your bench depending on how the rest of your lineup looks. Next, of course, now that we have an A, we have to have a B, and these are rookies who are worth owning to play in the future. And there's the 5 of them. None of them are projected to do very well in 2021. All of them are kind of behind more established running back for the most part, or 2 in some cases. But you kind of want some of these guys. I mean, they're going to be highly owned. They're probably going to be drafted late in rookie drafts if they haven't already been done. And they could, depending on what happens, they could exceed their projected points and give you great value, because 4 of the 5 of them make under $1 million a year. They might not play much for you this year beyond your bench, but they're definitely worth owning to have in the future, which is why they're just a notch below the 8A rookies. Now we're going to go to tier 9A, which is a mouthful. It's good in 2020 and under $1 million in salary for only 1 more year. And here they are. These are guys who they're going to be 100% owned probably, as they should be, because they could take over at any point, but they're not projected to start right now. But they were good last year. All 5 of them did pretty well last year. Ahmed didn't play a ton, but when he did play, he produced very well. And then 9B, tier 9B, the difference is that they weren't so good in 2020, but they still have those low salaries, under $1 million, only for 1 more year. But they're not projected to score nearly as high as the guys in tier 9A. So, Justin Jackson's on there. He did good in the games he played, but he didn't play a lot of them. So he kind of falls in the bottom. It's sort of in the beginning of tier 9B. Next, we've got tier 10A. Who we're calling previously valuable running backs on 1-year contracts who will help your team. The key word there being will, as we'll see later on. And these are just 2, James Conner and Leonard Fournette. Both of them are on 1-year deals. Both need to prove themselves. Both are projected to get about the same number of points. Interestingly, Fournette, his ADP is a lot lower than Conner. It's about 2 rounds lower. And that's probably because he's projected to be the starter in Tampa Bay, whereas Conner is projected to be the backup right now in Arizona. So then we've got tier 10B, who's very similar, and they're previously valuable running backs on 1-year contracts who might help your team. We're all pretty sure, barring injury, that Fournette and Conner are going to help your team. These guys might help your team. And a couple of Fournette's teammates head the list here, and Ronald Jones and Giovanni Bernard. And the rest of them, there's actually a large list of players here, and they kind of range in salary and range in projected points, but none of them are going to be the starters. Some of them are third down backs like Darrell Williams and James White. But some of them, they could take over if there's an injury or bad play by the starter. They're not going to cost you a ton. They're only on 1-year deals. So even if you have to drop them, they're not going to cost you a lot of dynasty dollars to drop. So they're just not guaranteed to help your team, which makes them a notch below Conner and Fournette. Next, we've got tier 11. And these are guys who are under $1 million in salary for only one more year with potential. And the potential part's the key here. You see the column projected points, and none of them are projected to do much, but they're all under $1 million. And injuries happen, guys come out of nowhere and play well. And so I'm not saying to go out and grab these guys early, but it is not a problem with having them at the end on your practice squad right now. Something might change, and they might be more valuable later on in the year. Next, we're getting to the end here. We've got tier 12A, which is low production, low salary running backs with multi-year contracts. And these guys, they're all backups. I mean, some of them could start if somebody gets injured. Some of them did start a little bit last year and played pretty well. But none of them are projected to be great. And they all are going to cost you about $1 million. The key column here is that they've got multiple years left on that contract. So if you take them, if you draft them and they end up not playing or not playing well and they're in your practice squad, you have to stick with them for a couple of years or drop them. And the drop fee is just going to be more because of the extra years of the contract. And here's some more guys. Again, less salary at the bottom of the list, so not going to cost you a lot to drop them, but they also aren't projected to get you a lot of points. So they're not dart throws, but they're practice squad players, to say the least, at least right now. And then we've got even lower production, but higher salary running backs with multi-year contracts. And these are guys who, you want to be careful with, I think. Sony Michel, he was great for a while, and he's projected to get almost 100 Dynasty fantasy points. He could also never play for Bill Belichick. And a lot of these guys are backups. The bottom two guys are in this list, Kenyon Drake and Tariq Cohen, are expected to play. It's just that they might be backups, and you're paying to pay a backup running back over $5 million, $5.75 million a year, and to be doing it for multiple years might not be the best investment in Dynasty owner. Probably fine in a regular Dynasty league to hang on to those guys and to have them in a redraft in case there's an injury, but in Dynasty owner, that's a lot of money where you could find a lot of guys in previous tiers who might do the same for like $1 million. So. And finally, our last and definitely least list is our rookie dart throws, and we got a lot of them. There's 2 pages of them. We won't go through all of them, but obviously they all have low salaries. Almost all are under $1 million. All of them are projected to get 50 or fewer Dynasty owner fantasy points if they get any this year. But you want to have, maybe you have 1 or 2 of them to see what happens. But be careful. There's, especially for this one, you've got 2 Atlanta running backs here, and Javian Hawkins and Caleb Huntley. You've also got 2 Cincinnati running backs here, and Chris Evans and Puka Williams. So you could get these guys, and they could be the star of training camp and end up playing a lot, or they could end up having a terrible camp and being dropped. So those are our running back tiers. I hope you stuck through the whole thing and liked it. Please like the video. Hopefully the tiers will be helpful for you when you draft, if you haven't drafted already. And if you have drafted already, maybe they're helpful in terms of thinking about trades. You might not like somebody in the one guy that you have, but he might be in the same tier here as somebody else who you do like, and maybe you can make a deal with that owner. Because, they're similar players, they just, you might not like them. You might not like your guy as much as you like somebody else's guy. So maybe this will facilitate some trade offers for people in established leagues or people who've already drafted this year. And hopefully this will start getting you thinking about things. If you're a new Dynasty owner and you've got a 2021 startup draft coming up soon, or in the next couple of weeks, or even in August and September. The ADPs might change, the salaries aren't going to change, the projected points might change, but some of these tiers are going to stay pretty much the same for a while until things shake out in training camp. So 2 more. We've got 2 tiers down, 2 to go. We've got the receivers, the wide receivers, and the tight ends coming up next week. In the next 2 weeks. So make sure you follow me. I'm Steve Van Tassel. I'm at SteveVT33 on Twitter. And make sure you follow Dynasty Owner, which is Dynasty_owner on Twitter as well. Check out the full article if you want to read more about this, or if you want to get the the list and keep those lists, print them out when you do your draft. I've done that for years with tiers in different leagues that the provided, from CBS and other places. So maybe these tiers will be helpful for you in your dynasty owner draft. Make sure to watch my videos and read my articles. Those come out on Wednesdays every week. We've got Matt the Jerk at Dynasty Jerk. He does his team-by-team breakdown, and those appear on Mondays. And then you got Jay Pounds, who talks about rebuilding. Right now he's in a series he's doing on buy, sell, and hold players. And those will come out. His articles and videos come out on Friday. Thanks a lot. Make sure to like the video, follow everybody, and thanks for being a Dynasty owner. Thanks for watching. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you next week. Bye.